Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. You know, I am hugely interested in having my conversation today with relational expert Dr. Debi Silbur. I watched 2 TED Talks given by Dr. Debi and decided I must have her on the podcast. Dr. Debi is renowned for her work with breaking patterns that lead to self-sabotage, which result in missing out on your greatest opportunities in life. And as you will quickly see, her insights are mega helpful. Dr. Debi is very well known in her fields. She has presented her life-altering thoughts on 2 TED Talks on her website, as well as guest appearances on Fox, CBS, and the Dr. Oz Show. She's highly in demand, and so we are so fortunate to have her with us today on the next chapter with Charlie. So let's bring her on. Dr. Debi Silbur, thank you, and welcome to the next chapter to Charlie.
Thank you. Looking forward to our conversation.
I am too. I'm very much looking forward to this. I think it's kind of an important topic to me, and I love all the information I can get on it, because we are so on the same page with your analysis of self-sabotaging your success, and maybe even more, wouldn't you say, self-sabotaging your happiness?
I mean, that's certainly something that we do if we're unaware. Don't believe it's intentional, but it's something that is very, very common. We do it for a number of reasons. Happy to share more about that. I think you're referring to the first TEDx talk, Stop Sabotaging Yourself.
Yes, I am.
I am. And in that talk, I gave examples of clients. Let's say one was, he was at the top of her game, professional, making a lot of money, had a beautiful office, well respected, and she came to see me because her energy was down. And so we did a bunch of things to get her energy back up, and then she realized that she hates her job. She chose a field just to please her parents. She never got married, never had a family. So the choice then is, what do you do with that? She went back to just being busy with work and sabotaged her success. And then there was another example of a very busy working mom who had gained a decent amount of weight, came to me for the weight loss, and she lost about 25, 30 pounds. Then all of a sudden she realized she wasn't sure. She was in love with her husband, didn't like her job. What does she do with that? Instead of working through those issues, she went back to all the foods, the weight back on, and sabotaged her success. And then there was a third example of someone who, he met with his friends every week to grab a beer and complain about their relationship and their lives. And at one point he realized it really wasn't fun if he's not going to do anything about it, just to complain. So he started personal development, and he got really excited about it. But when he brought it to his friends, they started making fun of him and just mocking him. Here was his choice. What does he do? So he stopped the personal development and sabotaged his success and started drinking with them even more. So it's really common. It's just, it's what we do, especially if we're unaware.
I agree with you. I think it's inordinately common. And, do you think so much of it has to do with our tendency, our desire, because of our basic human insecurity complexes that all of us deal with, that we're so interested in pleasing other people that we lose Shakespeare's edict of be true to thine own self, and that is less important than being true to the desires of others, so I can feel acceptable and honored and claimed. Do you think it has to do with that desire to please other people?
It certainly could be. In the demographic that I serve, I help people heal from betrayal, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And very often their self-esteem is shattered, and they're assuming that the betrayal from a family member, partner, friend, coworker, whoever, that it had anything to do with them. When they take it personally, is what makes betrayal a different type of trauma. That's one of the things that can happen. Then they personalize it, and then it affects their self-esteem, their confidence, their ability to trust, and so much more.
Let's briefly take a little side trip on betrayal. Now, when that word comes up, we are thinking, the common thing where I find my brain going to, and I think many people's brain goes to, you are thinking of a romantic relationship, a marriage, a long-term relationship where one partner goes off and does something with another partner. But there are, and that certainly is devastating betrayal. I mean, I don't want to downplay that by any means. And I know that's huge in your life. And we'll talk about National Forgiveness Day and how you've set up this national day of recognizing forgiveness. But betrayal goes beyond just the intimate male-female relationship. Betrayal can happen in business. It can happen in families. Give me other ideas of betrayal that are so critical, Debi.
Sure. So I define it as the breaking of a spoken or unspoken rule, and every relationship has them. And the way it works is the more you trust and the more you depend on the person, the deeper the betrayal. So, for example, a child who's completely dependent on their parent and the parent does something awful, that's going to have a different impact than, let's say, your best friend sharing your secret, your coworker taking credit for your idea. But betrayal has many phases. It could be someone in a position of authority. The understanding was, I'll listen to you and you'll do what the agreement was, whether it's a psychiatrist or psychologist or a doctor or therapist of some kind, and then they don't. That's a betrayal. It could be siblings. We'll take care of mom and dad one day, then that day comes and, where are they? That's a betrayal.
Oh, and that is so common. As I get older, I'm seeing that. I'm 73, I think. So no, 72 right now, 73 next month. I just see that to be more and more prevalent, especially as a parent dies, and the betrayal of siblings trying to get everything they can without concern for the parent, what the parent wanted, what their desire was. It's all so selfish, it seems. Yeah,
it's a shock to the body, the mind, the heart, because this was a person you thought you knew. And it's as if they've taken a mask off and they've shown you who they've been. And the reason why betrayal hits us the way it does is because this is the person, or these are the people who gave us a sense of safety and security. But this is the person, or these are the people to shatter that very sense of safety and security. It's traumatizing. And it is absolutely a different type of trauma. And that was the first of the 3 discoveries that I made. I'm happy to share those if you want to hear them.
Sure, but I want to talk just 1 second on the betrayal, because betrayal is not often, and I've not studied it like you, so I depend on your advice on this. But it seems to me that betrayal is not often a conscious choice. It's an emotional choice. It's a fear choice. It's that I don't have enough. What am I thinking of? The lack of supply. What do they call that? The syndrome where you don't have enough. There's always not enough. And so there's not enough to go around. And so there's something going on in the betrayer that's really psychologically messed up as well, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, sure. I mean, someone who's feeling good about themselves or living in integrity wouldn't do that. They live by a different set of rules. So it's someone's lack, someone's scarcity, someone's unhealed trauma, someone's,
right,
this inability to be their highest self at this point in time. We have programs within the PBT Institute for the betrayed.
That's a post-betrayal traumatic or post-betrayal transformation process, right?
The PBT Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute. And there are the betrayers who come into our rebuild program. They realize they've blown up the heart and the lives, the very people they cared about the most. And these people transform just as much as the betrayed.
Yes, that's a brilliant insight. I think that is really true. But you know what I want to, I'm so interested in the betrayal, and we will honor your day, this is Thursday, the 31st, and tomorrow, the 1st of September, will be the National Forgiveness Day, which is forgiving betrayed and I guess betrayer, it's an act of forgiveness and working through that. And I think that's a very honorable day. But I do want to go because I've studied and put myself into this self-sabotage, and I think maybe because it fits me personally right now, that this is a subject that really is driving me. And so what I'd like you to do? Can you, in your work on self-sabotage, can you give me a brief description on what you mean by self-sabotaging success and my word, happiness? What that's about?
I mean, the way I see self-sabotage is when you know something or someone is not in your best interest and you choose that anyway. You're not honoring who you are and what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah. And it's similar to self-betrayal. You're not honoring who what's in your best interest.
Well put.
It's very common.
Yeah, I like that. And when I think of self-sabotage, I can't help but go to people, and particularly women, who live in horrifically abusive marriages and relationships. And one wonders, why do they stay in there? And it's it's psychologically pretty common, although everyone is different, to be sure, but there is this in my mind, it's always about the fear of the unknown. And I frequently said it this way, and tell me what you think. In the minds of people who allow themselves to be submitted to those situations, it's almost as if a bad known is preferable to any unknown, because the unknown could be worse.
Yeah, it's, there are so many reasons why someone would find themselves in that sort of jam. But so true, we fear change. So often people will stay with their abuser, they will stay with their betrayer, the betrayer who has no interest, no intention on changing, because it's the known familiar. And they would rather say they know how to sort of work the known familiar, but they don't know what to expect with the unfamiliar. They stay with what's known, even if, and what is typically the case, unfamiliar is so much better. The idea is create the physical, mental, and emotional strength so that they realize, even though it's unfamiliar, it's got to be so much better than what you're currently working with now.
And that comes a lot from history of experience of the way you're raised, is it not? Are you raised with change and experimentation, or are you raised in a very staid, this is the way it works, you stay in this situation, and as you and I discussed, Christianity's pretty strong in my life, and there's the Christian edicts among certain denominations that divorce is not an option or it's a bad thing, and sometimes when done properly, it's the best thing for a couple. They were not, they are just not emotionally and sort of objectively and goal-oriented. They're not on the same page. And this is just a life of hell, and yet they are taught that if they do it, there's going to be some sort of heavenly severe consequences. And I find that really damaging. And it's not that I think willy-nilly about marriage. I don't think willy-nilly about marriage. I think marriage is very, very important, but it doesn't work for everybody.
Well, we actually had 3 groups in the study that did not heal, and I'm again happy to talk about the study and the
Yeah,
discoveries.
please do.
But anyway, just to finish this up, one of them, you know what? Okay, I'll come back to that. I did a study on betrayal. You know, what holds us back, what helps us heal, and what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. Well, that study led to the 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life. So the first discovery, we sort of mentioned that, and that's that betrayal is a different type of trauma. I've been through death of a loved one. I've been through disease, betrayal, and betrayal felt very different for me. Didn't want to assume it was the same for all my study participants, so I asked them, if you've been through other traumas, does it feel different for you? Unanimously said, oh my gosh, it's so different, and here's why. Because it feels so intentional. We take it so personally. The entire self is shattered. It has to be rebuilt. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. You know, when you lose someone you love, for example, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss. You don't necessarily question relationship. You don't question ability to trust. You don't question your sanity. With betrayal, you do. That betrayal is a different type of trauma. That was the first discovery. Want me to go into the second one?
Sure.
So the second one was that there's actually a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's known as post-betrayal syndrome. And we've had over 95,000 people take our post-betrayal syndrome quiz
Amazing.
on our site.
Yeah.
To see to what extent they're struggling. And, you know, the first thing is we've all been taught time heals all wounds. So I have the proof that when it comes to betrayal, that's not true. There's a question on the quiz that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, betrayal happened 40 years ago and I can feel the hate. Betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust. We know that we cannot count on time or a new relationship to heal betrayal until and unless you deliberately and intentionally heal it. It will follow you around in every relationship you have going forward in some way. So that's the first thing. And I'm happy to read some of the stats from the quiz, if that would help.
I don't know that that's exactly where I want to go, but you know, if you feel it's important, I'm happy to listen.
Hey, it's your show. People usually just typically like the stats. We can go on to this.
Yeah, I have a couple other questions that I think are very relevant, and that is, I read, and I wonder how much you agree with this, that when back on self-sabotage, maybe you could do this before we even go. Is there a relationship between betrayal and self-sabotage?
I mean, it could certainly be. If someone is sabotaging themselves, they're not living, acting, functioning at their highest place. So
right.
Common that they may betray, or someone, the person who is betrayed, can sabotage their healing because they don't want to outgrow their betrayer. We see that a lot.
So I read, as I was studying up for the show, I read this comment that struck me. Do you agree that self-sabotage is often driven by constantly recurring negative self-talk? That negative self-talk is sort of one of the roots of self-sabotage. How do you feel about that?
Could certainly be. I mean, you know, if you're constantly negative, critical, judgmental, pessimistic of yourself and others, you know, then it's very unlikely you're going to have motivation or incentive you need to do something other than what you're currently doing. That's really classic to with the third discovery, stage 3. You know, what we discovered was while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many people do, we're going to fully heal. We're going to move through 5 proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every stage, and we know what it takes to move one stage to the next. Healing from betrayal is entirely predictable, but the type of personality and those characteristics are classic to stage 3, and that's where most people stay. And that's why most people have repeat betrayals, have symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome, why they keep people at bay, or they're afraid to open up their hearts again. It's classic.
Once, oh my goodness, if I go how many years back, it was 1985 to 1991. So a lot of years back, I was in a large church. I was a minister in a large church. I wasn't the senior minister, but we had, pretty large at that time in the late 90s or the late 80s. It was about a 15,000 person church, and I was in charge of single adult ministry. And one of the things that seemed common in that ministry was an ideal that they had nothing to do with the breakup of their marriage. Many of them were divorced, and that they had little to do with it, and it was all another person's responsibility. And we tried to help them see, yes, you were dealing with a jerk, no doubt about it, but what is your role in it? How do you overcome it? How do you overcome what you're trying to do? And that helps lead to another step. What do you think?
Well, I think, it's an opportunity for both people to take a really good look. Clearly, if someone betrays, is not the betrayer's fault. A person is in control of their actions. That the person betrayed should ever be blamed is just wrong. And that's just wrong. However, the betrayed can always look at their experience and say, and use it as an opportunity to say, what was I tolerating? What was I settling for? How was I not honoring my own needs? What was I putting up with that if I felt more confident, worthy, deserving, lovable, whatever, I would have done differently. So it's never the betrayed fault. It definitely is their opportunity.
Yeah, I read in. Are you familiar with Alain de Botton? He's written on love a lot. He has a book called School of Life, and he does a whole section of adultery, and he begins this section, and he's really quite. You might want to check him out. He's really quite astute and does very good research. And he says that typically adultery starts long before adultery occurs. And if we could ever get to that point, we could prevent it. And this is without putting blame on either party. But you know what I'm wondering? I'm going to go back to the self-talk. And I'm thinking, let's think of the betrayed. There is just a huge amount of negative self-talk, is there not? That I'm not worthy. Somebody did this to me, but I am really ultimately responsible. And I didn't fit according to my parents' objectives for me, or according to the society's or my church. And so it's all sort of this self-recrimination, sort of self-flagellation that just leads to deeper and deeper regret, remorse, and incapacity.
It's way more than that. This is trauma.
This is what?
Betrayed. This is trauma.
Okay.
This is I really look at betrayal as one of the most painful of the human experiences. I mean, this is the person. These were the people you trusted, that you counted on when other people were causing harm. These were the ones you run to, and then that turns out to be the person causing the harm. This was, that sense of safety and security completely ripped from under you. So this is deep trauma to the body, the mind, the heart. I mean, that's why people have all of those symptoms. I didn't share the symptoms of the staph post-betrayal syndrome, but it's severe and natural for the person to question their bearing. I mean, they were abiding by the rules, and without their awareness or consent, the person they trusted fully and completely decided to break those rules. So they have to rebuild their lives and themselves from the ground up. So, are they struggling? Most certainly. The good news is they can heal from all of it. That's that third discovery with the 5 stages. But it's deep trauma. That's what they're all experiencing. If they don't heal it, very likely they go through it again and again and again. That's the person who's stuck in stage 3. Most people.
And maybe
but that's why it's my intention to get the 5 stages out there to as many people as possible so they know how predictable healing from betrayal can be.
before we get to the 5 stages, tell me, you write also about staying small and safe, and that you encourage people to turn, the key to turning that around happens when the pain of where you are becomes greater than the fear of the changes it will take to move on.
Yeah.
Does that have to do with the 3rd stages? Is this risk or this deterrent of staying small and staying safe, but staying dissatisfied, depressed, discouraged? You know, that staying small is a very terrible place to live.
Mm-hmm. And that's where most people find themselves, and they stay. And it's only when you realize this is only going to give me more of the same, and it's worth taking that leap and seeing that there's so much more available to someone. The person in stages 4 and stage 5 is radically different than the person before they entered into those stages, because they've completely rebuilt new self. They took all the parts they loved, left behind everything that no longer serves, and they created a version of them so strong, so healthy, so confident. It's worth the ride.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and then I'm going to want to get into your 5 steps, but I do have a question beforehand. And this is something you said, and then something that occurs to me. And you said often, and we're back on, we're crossing between self-sabotage and betrayal, but they're very closely related. Often self-sabotage comes, and our way of dealing with betrayal, our dealing with the trauma of betrayal, comes in the forms of drugs or alcohol, TV, work, or even food. All of these make up for or seem to compensate for our difficulties. But, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've got, depends on how you look at it, I've got 12 years, but I've got 25 years with a 2-year, went out and had fun. But, so I've dealt with addiction quite a bit. And, Dr. Debi, I came to realize at some point, because alcohol, wine was my drug of choice, I don't drink to get high. I drink to get normal. It is about numbing and distracting. And when I numb and distract, then I'm a perfectly happy person. And but I can't, obviously as a recovering alcoholic, I can't live there because that didn't work. But how do you feel about that, about using these alternative sources to mask our pain, that it's not about getting high, it's just about getting normal, it's just about feeling all right about myself?
Yeah, it's a short-term Band-Aid, because
yes,
again, unless and until you work on whatever it is that has you feeling that you're not enough
right.
Without it, no, any substance, any distraction will only fill that void while it's being used. So the whole idea is, we have a saying within the PBT Institute, and it's hard now, easy later. Easy now, hard later. Take your pick, it's going to be one of those two. So that's really a question of easy now, I'm going to numb so I don't see it, feel it, know it. Hard later, it's there.
But it only exacerbates it as well. It doesn't just heal for the moment. It just gets worse and worse and worse until now you've got another problem. Now you have an addictive problem or something.
The hard
okay.
later versus hard, versus the hard now, I'm going to take this on and work on this easy later. You live a very different life.
I love it. Let's take a break, and I want to hear your 5 stages, okay?
All right.
Hi there, this is Charlie Hedges, and you are listening to The Next Chapter with Charlie and my very, very special guest, Dr. Debi Silbur, who we are talking about sort of an integration of two topics. We began on self-sabotaging your success or your happiness, but at the same time, a major cause of the loss of success, self-happiness, and a better life has to do with the various betrayals that we have encountered either as the betrayed person or the betrayer who's going through a number of psychological issues at the same time. And Debi has 5 stages for recovering from betrayal, and as I would add, it's integrating how we can promote, not sabotage, how we can promote our psychological and sort of teleological goals in the future. So, Debi, show's yours.
Sure. The 5 stages, is that what you want to hear?
Tis it, yes.
All right, great. Yeah, the third was the most exciting discovery. And like I said, what was discovered was there are these 5 stages that we will go through if we're going to fully heal. And we know exactly what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally. So we know exactly how to move someone through the 5 stages. So it's all we do within the PBT Institute. It's what all of our coaches are certified in. They're all mapped out in Trust again. Here's a distilled version. So stage 1 is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody was a real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, and kind of neglecting or ignoring emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being. But if you're only paying attention to, if a table only has 2 legs, it's easy for that table to topple over. That's us. Stage 2, scariest of all of the stages. This is shock, trauma, day, discovery day. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. So right here, you've ignited the stress response. You're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. You can't wrap your mind around what you just learned. You just can't even, it doesn't make sense. Your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model, rules that govern you that prevent chaos. Don't go here, trust this person. And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, every rule you've been following and holding to be real and true is no longer. The bottom has truly bottomed out on you, and the new bottom hasn't been formed yet. It's terrifying. Think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything or anyone you could to stay safe and stay alive. Stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this? Who can I trust? Sort of thing. Here's the catch though. Stage 3, by far, as I said earlier, is the most common place we get stuck, and here's why. Once we've figured out how to survive our experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where we just came from, we think it's good. And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know that there's a stage 4 or stage 5. Transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because we don't know that, we plant roots here, we park here. We're not supposed to, but we do. And 4 things.
So if I may, it's sort of up to stage 3. It's sort of a reconciliation. You reconcile within yourself what the issues are, but you have not defined any terms of transformation, how you can move on from that.
Not really reconciling, you're just trying to find solid ground after your world has been rocked. Okay. And then when you find that solid ground, you think this is as good as it's going to get. So it's, your world has just been completely upended in a moment, in a series of moments. And so that shock and trauma has you just scrambling to find, can I trust? How, well, what can I do? How do I manage this?
Okay.
Once you find how to manage it, you think, okay, well, this is my new space. Let me park here. And then what happens is you start getting all self-benefits. You get your story, you get sympathy from everyone, and you get to be right. And on some level, you're really not getting much else, so this feels good. You plant deeper roots. So now because you're here, longer than you should be, now the mind starts doing things like, well, maybe you're not that great. Maybe you deserved it. All that negative self-talk that we spoke about earlier. Because these are the thoughts you're thinking, so you plant deeper roots. Now, because these are the thoughts you're thinking over, an amount of time, this is the energy you start putting out. So like energy attracts like energy. Now you start calling situations and circumstances and relationships towards you to confirm this is exactly where you belong. This is where you join that lame support group that keeps you stuck. This is where you'll sabotage your growth because you don't want to outgrow your betrayer. And the last of it is, I'll get you out of here once we're done with this part. Because it feels so bad, you don't see past that. You think to yourself, well, I have to get through my day. I have to work. I have to feed my kids, whatever it is for you.
Right.
Right here is where we start numbing. We start using food, drugs, alcohol,
right,
TV, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we do it for a day, a week, a month. It's a habit, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years later and say, that drinking you're doing, or that emotional eating, or that numbing in front of the TV, do you think that has anything to do with that betrayal? They would look at me like I'm crazy.
Of
It
course.
happened 20 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I so agree.
And that's why most people find themselves after that, after betrayal, they'll make it to stage 3 and then they'll stop.
So how do they sabotage getting from stage 3 to stage 4 and 5? What sorts of things are going on that they themselves will prevent growth?
Yeah, well, like I can share with you, and I do want to share 4 and 5 so people can find a way out of it. But
I thought we did. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
We stopped at 3. So there were 3 groups in the study who did not heal. The first group was the group that was numbing, avoiding, and distracting. Ran to the doctor who put them on a mood stabilizer or an anti-anxiety medication. They started drinking, whatever it was, didn't heal. Second group, this was the group, they had their story and they were sticking with it. That's all they had. And the third group, this was the group that was, the group where the betrayer had very little consequences, whether it was out of fear of breaking up a family, financial fear, religious reasons was a big one. They just did all they could. Turn the other cheek, look the other way. And I saw 2 things with this group. Number 1, further deterioration of the relationship. And number 2, this was the group that was the most physically ill. So your broken heart can't take that. But they, in trying to move past it without doing the work to heal from anything, they were by far most. Anyway.
Yeah, and you can talk yourself into staying there very easily.
Well, it was many reasons. Like I said, religious reasons was a big one that you mentioned before. That was a big part of it. Or financial fear or whatever it was, or just their own, whatever their decision.
Or what other people will think. What are your friends going to think? What are your parents going to think? What is it? You're just, you're taking the chance of exposing yourself, which is, the last thing any of us want to do.
And exposing the betrayer.
Exposing the betrayer and is exposing you as gullible to the betrayer.
Right. Yeah. And
so what are 4 and 5?
Suffer in silence. Yeah. So if you're willing to let go of those stories and the victim sense and grieve, mourn the loss, a bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. Here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Right there, you start turning down the stress response. So you're not healing just yet, but at least you stopped the massive damage you've been creating in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved. If you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, whatever, all your stuff's not there. You're like, okay, we got this. Feels like that. But it's interesting because if you were to move, you don't take everything with you. What I found was there's this one spot moving from stage 3 to stage 4 If your friends weren't there for you, you don't take them with you right here. That lame support group, you don't take them with you. The betrayer who has no intention of changing, you don't take them with you. Right there in that one spot. Anyway.
So are you alone?
No, you don't have to be at all. You've found like-minded, growth-oriented, high-caliber, people who live in integrity and who are living in a way you're moving toward.
So there's a community
who help you grow. That's what the PBT Institute is for, because if you don't have that community, very often we don't want to be alone in our transformation or in our healing. So we settle for that known familiar. So the idea is you have a community of support that will lift and inspire you, and you'll continue your healing. If not, may just settle what you know, more of the same and what you know. When you've settled into this new state, you've made it sort of mentally okay, move into the fifth most beautiful space, and this is healing, rebirth, the new world view. Body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. You didn't have the end list of that earlier. Now you do. Mind healing. You're making all kinds of new rules and new boundaries based on the road you just traveled. You have a new world view based on everything. See so clearly now. And 4 legs of the table. In the beginning, it was all about physical and the mental. At this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional, the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Love it. Couple of comments. I just had because so much of what we're dealing with is the past and how we're managing the past. Even if the past is very recent, it is nevertheless past, and they are things to deal with us. I had a meeting with my therapist yesterday, and at 73 years old, I'm going through a major transformation, which is very, very healthy for me. It's not out of an unhealthy life. It's out of a decent life that can go to another level. And he said to me that he was so encouraged because I was successfully reducing the power of the past, and that I was looking at who I am today. I'm a different person today. I don't look at the past, and that was very encouraging. And I think that has to do with, it fits into one of your steps, is not letting the power of the past control you, but that you're thinking more productively and more future oriented. But what I think I want to wrap up the show, and what I want to wrap up the show with is a line that you have that I think sort of, for me, summarizes much of what you were doing, and it also is the subject matter of a book that I'm writing. So I get to promote my book, which is unwritten, so what good does it do to promote it? But you said, I don't know if you said or you wrote, it was one of the two, you are who you are becoming. And your life is a present choice, is a personal choice. You are today, you are tomorrow who you're becoming today. I took that from a quote that I'm going to use in the book. You are who you have been becoming. So, your present is an amalgamation of your past, but you have a choice. You have a choice to make a new decision today, and make today, in that old trite saying, make today the first day of the rest of your life. But it is a commitment to saying, I am going to live differently, think differently, feel differently. And all of this is in accordance with, as Shakespeare said, to thy own self. And it's also to the service of other people. It's not just about me. It's not just egocentric. It's how can I serve other people well? And that seemed to be a statement that kind of wraps up much of what you're saying. Did I oversimplify you, Dr. Debi?
Not at all. I don't remember saying that or writing it, but it sounds like something I absolutely agree with.
Well, I'll send you a copy of my book whenever the doggone thing is written. Let's close it out with your day that happens tomorrow on the 1st. This will air on the 3rd or 4th of September. Tell us about National Forgiveness Day.
Thank you. It's the PBT Institute is honored. We are the founders of National Forgiveness Day, and we're kicking off our celebration with a 21-day forgiveness journey where I am sharing for 21 days the most powerful stories on forgiveness, just tools, strategies, everything I know, help people move from angry, bitter, and resentful to more forgiving and free with intention and group support. And they can just find everything at nationalforgivenessday.com.
I'm writing that down, so I'll put that in the show notes. Dr. Debi, you are amazing. I so loved your TED Talks, loved what I've read about you, so appreciate your service to humanity. You are a wonderful human being.
Thank you so much.
And I'd like to thank all our listeners to The Next Chapter with Charlie. Until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.